Hey, Engraver here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to some more SuperCollider. We are exploring FM again, and this time we are exploring some good old-fashioned classic FM synthesis. Whereas before, the previous videos, I had us working with FM and moving FM through the length and trajectory of an audio file. We're not going to be working with audio files in this demonstration. We're just going to dig up some old classic sci-fi sounds. It's going to be great. But before we get into those, I do want to talk about 3 ingredients you need for some classic FM synthesis. The first is you need a carrier frequency. I like to think of this as a point of reference. Then you will need a frequency modulator, so a number of cycles per second added to this carrier frequency. And thirdly, we need the amplitude of this modulator. And it's a frequency affecting the distance between the carrier and the sidebands outputted. So if you have an amplitude modulator or amplitude of the modulator set to 20, think of the reference point, let's say 500, think of the reference point at 500, and that frequency is actually traveling, or the frequency modulation is traveling between 480 and 520. So those are the 3 ingredients that we need. Here are some additional notes on sidebands. I dug up these notes. I wrote them down pretty much verbatim from Eli Fieldsteel's 2 tutorials on FM synthesis. I will include those in the description below. They're very great, great explanations, very comprehensive, and he has actual wonderful, colorful visuals to help you understand how FM works. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into some sound here, where we have a synth def. And our arguments are the carrier frequency, our frequency modulator, and the amplitude of our modulator. We have a standard percussive envelope, and the variable for our modulation is a sine oscillator, using our mod hertz here and mod amp, and then our carrier, where we are adding our modulator here, scaling it with our envelope and amplitude. And here we have a simple but effective tone. Nothing to it there. Now I have it at 100, our frequency modulator here at 100, and I went back down to 10 so you can actually hear how this really is effective. So actually we'll go ahead and put this back to our default amplitude of the modulator with a longer release time. Let's go ahead and hear this. So what you're hearing is the carrier frequency of 500 that is added to, there's a modulation added to that, kind of the sum of the signal, where it's adding 10 cycles per second. So you're hearing that warbling. You can actually see it in the scope here. And the signal is actually traveling from 300 hertz to 700 hertz at 10 cycles per second. So that's effectively the sound you are hearing. Let's add only 20. So you can hear a little bit of a shaking, but it's obviously harder to perceive the distance traveled. Maybe even less. Hardly anything. But you can see some shifting in the scope. And let's make it 500. All right. I think 200 is a good value. That kind of wobbly feeling you were hearing before, that's actually, I think that is, if I had the modulator, the amplitude of the modulator set at 500, you can almost hear that like subharmonic feel, and I believe that is just traveling, almost crossing at 0, or not crossing, it's right at 0, traveling all the way to 1,000, so it has kind of a, disjunct, bubbly effect that I'm not actually a fan of. That's okay, so we'll go back to that. All right, but let's go ahead and add some randomness to both our reference point, in our carrier frequency from 200 to 2000, and our frequency modulator between 10 and 100, our amplitude between 10 and 100, and the actual output amplitude between 100th and a third, roughly, and then pan it back and forth. I would say that is quite quiet, so let's go ahead and hear a little bit more. And then including a P-bind in the mix. I did change the attack and also release to have a little bit more variety and randomness. So if you've ever wondered what language R2-D2 speaks, it's FM. It's pure FM that he speaks. So, if you're into SuperCollider, you could probably understand what he's saying, or at least understand the signs of how he speaks. So this is all well and good, but it is quite random, and you might be hearing some pitches. You might be perceiving some pitches, but they're actually not so much the pitch like a carrier frequency or frequency of 500. Okay, I'm hearing the pitch A at 440. Well, actually, sometimes I wouldn't even be hearing the perceived pitch. I'd be hearing the audible sidebands, which has me believe, oh, I'm hearing it higher or I'm hearing it lower, but nothing specific to where we can actually compose melodies and tunes and harmonies with FM synthesis. So we actually have to find a way to make this a fixed pitch, a pitch that we perceive at a pitch that is. So how do we do that? Well, we need ratio relationships, as explained in the second tutorial of Field Steele's tutorials on FM. And what he has suggested is we need a ratio relationship, a ratio to independently scale the frequencies from the two oscillators, from the carrier frequency and the frequency modulator, the cycles per second added to the carrier frequency. So let's go ahead and do that. We have a fixed frequency with a modulator ratio set to 1 and a carrier frequency set to 1. Right now, they're both set to 1, so a ratio of 1 to 1, with our amplitude of the modulator at 20. So let's hear how this sounds. We have changed it. We've changed the mod variable from the previous synth to where it's scaled with the modulator ratio. And our carrier frequency is the fixed frequency with the carrier ratio plus the modulator. So a summation of those three ingredients. As per usual, scaled at the envelope and amplitude. And let's see what we have so far. You can see I have the argument frequency randomly set to 200, between 200 and 2000 hertz, rounded to the nearest 100, the next 100 value, the value that is divisible by 100. So let's go ahead and see how that sounds. So definite pitch, we can set it to the method MIDI CPS, where we have 60.MIDI CPS as our middle C. Let's add here the carrier multiple or multiplier. So if you're aware of the fundamentals of fundamental frequency and overtones, you might be hearing, this kind of sounds like the overtones of a pitch, and that is true. So what we have here is the ratio as is, as our normal pitch and a normal tone. Then we go to the next one, which you hear the octave higher. The next one, which you hear that fifth there. which is part of the overtone series, and so on. And if you want to add inharmonicity to that, you just simply add it as a non-integer. So let's go ahead and do that. Can't really perceive it the higher it is in frequency. So let me go ahead and drop that to something like this. There. It's kind of a fuzzy, almost bell sound. All right, let's continue. Now we're adding and increasing the modulator multiplier, and increasing this, the increase in the ratio will also increase the spacing of side bands to give us different overtones. Now Field Steel uses the frequency scope, and I try to put it on my screen. I can't fit it, so if you want to see what that looks like, again, go to his videos. But you can actually see how side bands are spaced, or how they're getting really tight and compressed, and you can hear the difference in tone and quality there, but you'll be able to hear the difference enough with just the scope and then the tone. So let's go ahead and do that. I think I can make this a little bit louder. That's just a little bit of tail. You can kind of hear it very faintly, the change in color. And then adding ratio relationships between the carrier and the modulator multipliers. That's quite nice. I think I'll go back to at least 5 there. Kind of hear it there. Let's go ahead and change this. So Eli Field Steel defined the index modulation as index equals the modulator amplitude to the modulator frequency. Again, he's got good visuals. All right, let's scale an index argument to the modulator variable. So I have a new argument here, index equals 1 right now, scaling it to our modulator variable here. And let's see what that does. So I have it default to 1. We'll just start with 1. I kind of want to raise the amplitude just a little bit so you can hear the difference in tone. We'll try that again. Pretty sharp, but pretty cool also. Now let's add an envelope to this index. So we have that as our next variable. So we have an envelope variable, and now we're going to have an index envelope. So an envelope specified just for that index that changes the tone. So we have a standard mgen, ugen with our envelope, kind of like with the time values and the points for an envelope. We have our index to our index scaled with a specific scale value there, back to our index. And then an attack and release time, which I have here. Let's go ahead and try that. Here we have in our modulator, our variable here, our frequency scaled by our modulation frequency. And our multiple is our frequency scaled by our modulation frequency, our ratio. I should have said that first. Also scaled by our envelope for our index. So let's go ahead and try that. It's pretty sweet. Now, first of all, I want to say that that's a really good bass. Well, we'll try that again. Again, I feel like it should be a little bit louder because that bass sounds awesome. It's such a great sounding bass. This is SuperCollider. I'd EQ it just a little bit, but that's all right. Okay, now let's add an index of, well, let's hear it as 1. Same thing. 3. Okay. I would say that's a little loud. We will go ahead and add an amplitude. We'll add it at the end there of 5. So let's go ahead and scale it to 1. So notice those integers have a sharp attack with a new color, a tonal color there. However, when you go between values 0 and 1, you have quite that nice growth of the envelope. It's just great. Let's add 30 to our index, and we'll just go ahead and do this again. It's good stuff. It's definitely good stuff. So anything else? Just a longer release, I guess. We'll go ahead and add the amplitude of 5 there as well. I like it a lot. And then, of course, random frequencies, rounded to something, the next value divisible by 2, between 30 and 42, or an octave with the index of 50. All right, now let's add the carrier modulator ratio. And I have it between 1 and 8. So you kind of hear the harmonics in sequence. Okay, is it the second harmonic or an octave higher? So we'll see here. Not as cool. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's great stuff. Great stuff. All right. Now, we don't have to just have one modulator. As Field Steel said in his videos, we can just keep adding modulators. We can just change the maybe the attack and release or the index value. We could just have multiple modulators for multiple envelopes just to see how, what kind of sounds we come up with. But just to give you a little bit of a teaser, as he did in his video, just go ahead and make sure that is up a little bit there. We are simply adding another modulator to our variable, our list of variables. And we've got another sine oscillator with our frequency divisible by 10, also our mole value, also divisible by 10, scaling it at the index envelope. And this is what we come up with. Oh, we do add that to our first modulator that we had. So really the sonic possibilities are endless. So I like this. I kind of want to explore more of these sounds before I get back into audiophiles, but it would be really interesting to see what I could do with more sounds in FM, as well as putting these, through an audio file. And I haven't even added things like delay and reverb. So, really the possibilities are quite endless. So hopefully you like that. Thank you always for watching and listening. Always be on the lookout for some more experimentation in SuperCollider or Logic Pro. And until I see you next, keep producing the music you love, keep experimenting, and I will catch you later. Thanks again.